Now, I mean, you can either use one of these pilot drawing pens if you've got such a thing. Oh, they look like that, and they're very nice to draw with. This is an 0.5, or the alternative is something like this, which is what I'm going to be using, but you need to dip into ink. So I'm going to be using this pen. It's got what's called a Gillett 303 nib in it, and it's really nice for drawing with. It doesn't have a reservoir or anything. It's just literally I dip in, pick up some ink in the nib, and then draw with it. You have to regularly refill, of course, and you have to also be careful about not getting drips, if you take too much ink up. So just show you briefly. So again, I can make a similar line with this as I could with the pilot. Okay. Now what I want you to do, well, I'd like us to do these exercises. So the first exercise will be to actually, I'm going to have to bring this a little closer to me, but to draw a square. And you can, if you don't know what a square is and can keep it in your head, then by all means just put some little pencil dots to represent a square to help yourself, like that. Well, even that doesn't look like a square, it's more like a rectangle, but anyway, you know what I mean. And then start by drawing horizontal lines that are very close together but evenly spaced. And then gradually open them up. So if I just show you what we're aiming for, we're aiming for this one here. So the lines are close together to start off with, and then gradually open up out as they get towards the bottom of the square. So let's do that one first, shall we? Okay. First 2 or 3 will be absolutely close together and evenly spaced. And then gradually I would increase the space between the line and open it out a bit more. So all the same length, and then spacing getting bigger as you go towards the bottom. Probably enough. Or maybe you'll have one more. Okay. And then you can mark, if you could mark out 2 more squares of the same proportion, so they're not too big, but just big enough to do this exercise. So 2 more squares, 4 little dots for the second one, and then the last one, 4 more little dots. So the next exercise for everybody is this one here. So as I don't know if you can see from your own drawing, but where the lines are close together, the tone is slightly darker. If you look at it and sort of half close your eyes, as the spacing or the space between the lines gets bigger and more white paper is being revealed, then it's a lighter tone. If I did another one underneath, it will be lighter still, but I'm not going to. So this one here is employing what we call cross-hatching, this next one here. So I'll just do it, and then you can actually do it yourself in a minute. So in this one, I'm going to start by doing
Can I do it the other way, being left-handed?
Yes, of course. You can do the same sort of procedure. You can open the spacing out. And then we're going to cross hatch across. So we're going to go in the opposite direction. Again, start with the spacing between the lines quite close, and then open it out. Okay, and again, you can see where the lines are crossing over each other and they're close together, it creates more of a dark. Now, there is, if you just want to watch me, I'm going to actually do one more thing, which isn't in this exercise, but if I was doing the cross hatching, I might actually go over some of it in a completely different direction. And as you can see, that little corner there where I've done 3 lots of lines crossing over each other is even darker still. Okay. You can try some other things. You can try doing lines that go from the top to the bottom, and again going over three times in some of the area to make it darker, like that. And the final square, for those of you that have done that, is to then do it with dots. So dots that are close together at the top of the square and more concentrated coverage. And then, you know, gradually open them out so they're not so close together, and there's more white around each individual dot. And then you'll see again that has a similar sort of effect. You try not to do what I've just done, which is a big blob. Okay, and I think we'll just do this. The last one will be this little pyramid. It's quite good to do this little pyramid because we can, if you treat whatever shape you do, it's going to have an area of it that will have more less light and more tone, and then another area where obviously there's a lot of light and virtually no tone, and then the background will also be a tone, and there may well be a cast shadow. So if you could draw yourself, again, if you want to do it with pencil, you know, the 3 points of the pyramid. The face will be completely white, like the one here. And this face will be very dark because it's not getting any light. The background will also be treated as a sort of half tone, and then there'll be a little cast shadow coming from this dark edge. This is an imaginary pyramid, okay? So let's see if we can do that too. Now, in this one, it's very important that when you do the cross hatching, and I'm just going to give you a little demonstration. So if you could just watch. When you do the lines, you need to keep them evenly spaced in this particular type of cross hatching. Okay, so it's not a sort of random thing. Then when you go at it from the other direction, again, as far as possible, keep the spacing even. And then the third time I go across it, again, the same thing applies. Keep the spacing absolutely regular. If you don't do it regular, it just ends up looking rough and uncontrolled in a way. I'm not suggesting it has to be a controlled drawing, but I think when you're using cross-hatching, it needs to be done as well as you can manage it. So when you do a little practice just to get the feel of it like I've done there, and then when you're ready, have a go at doing your little pyramid. I'm going to have to turn my board because otherwise I'm at a terribly awkward angle. So I'll try and bring it down so you can see it. Is that all right? Just about. And then I'm going to turn my board once more. Whoops. It's too high. Now you can see it.
It's just in the corner. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Is that all right? Can you see it? Whoops.
Yeah.
Down a bit. And now I'm going to try and attempt to go at it from another direction. Okay. And I'm also going to do the cast shadow while I'm in this position. And then obviously the actual area of the half tone, which is at the back. Okay. Looks like it's flying a bit, my pyramid. And then put your pens down when you've done that. I mean, you could try doing a sphere in the same way. I mean, all these are just sort of exercises in mark making and the type of marks you can make with a pen or a pencil. I mean, some of these have been done with pencil, but you can do exactly the same with a pen, is what I'm trying to say. To say is, if you've got a paintbrush at hand and
Yes.
a saucer or somewhere you can make up some wash, I don't recommend putting drawing ink into a plastic palette because it does stain. So if you've got a little saucer that you don't mind using or a jam jar even, for making up a wash, for those of you that have finished the exercises, could you create a thin version of ink? And if you haven't got ink, you can do it with watercolor. I'll show you what I'm talking about. I'm just going to put some water in a jam jar. I'm going to use a little jam jar because I've got one handy. Those of you that have done all these little exercises, I'd like you to just make up a wash that's about that sort of darkness, okay? And you can either do it with black ink or you can do it with brown, whichever you prefer. And if you haven't got ink, then you can do it with a watercolor, like a burnt sienna, if you've got one handy. You don't have to do it. I mean, I just think, make sure you've got a little square of wash so you can see what you've got. I can see one on your exercise sheet. If you've done this little square of cross hatching, I'd like you just to take your brush with just plain straight water on it and just, I mean, it depends on the ink you've got. Mine is not waterproof. So this is what happens when I apply water to it.
Oh.
Can you see? It dissolves, is what I'm trying to say. So I mean, I think it's quite a nice addition to a pen and ink drawing to have some wash in it. But I think what we're going to have a brief look at is some examples of pen and ink and wash before we actually go on to our subject. And I found when I was doing mine this afternoon that I think it's better if you put the wash area, which you can use for halftone or paler areas, you put it down first, let it dry, and then go over it with the pen and ink, rather than putting the water on afterwards or the wash on afterwards. Because what happens if you put it on afterwards and it's an ink that's not waterproof, it will dissolve and you just end up losing the lovely crispness that you can create with the pen and ink line. Does that make sense to everybody?